It's been a few weeks since the Final Fantasy XVI Dominance trailer aired during the State of Play presentation, but even though the trailer was great, it felt like it was lacking a proper follow-up to explain more about what was going on and provide a bit more context about Final Fantasy XVI as a whole. Well, we're glad to report that the follow-up has now arrived, as a suite of interviews with Naoki Yoshida and Michael Christopher Koji-Fox have just dropped from some of the world's largest video game publications, and they have revealed an absolute boatload of information about the game, including answers to some pertinent questions such as, will there be a party, and will the game actually be M-rated? To get right to it, Yoshida shared via the Square Enix blog that their objective for the game is pretty simple. They want to create a breathtaking experience through a combination of an expansive story, dramatic cutscenes, and real-time battles, including gargantuan-style Eikon clashes, all seamlessly connected. It will see Eikons play a similar role to that in Type 0, where they were weapons of mass destruction, and each major nation could call upon them for support. Yoshida compared their power to the role of a nuclear bomb, noting that so far in Valisthea they have seldom been used due to how powerful they are. However, we arrive at a time in the story when the power of the Mother Crystals has started to fade, and this has led to nations invading each other in order to secure the resources they need to survive. In this way, Yoshida compared it to how nations within our own world are constantly fighting over the oil fields. As such, the story will be based around the concept of perspective. Due to their power to literally transform into icons as opposed to being connected to traditional summoners, the Dominants will be key figures throughout the world of Valisthea. Each believes the world should exist in a certain way, and conflicts will therefore arise based on how their values and ideals clash. But it's going to be written in such a way that it won't be black and white, and it will be left to the player to determine who they believe is right or wrong. These conflicts will be ever evolving, and to help convey this, the story will be segmented into 3 distinct phases, focused around Clive as he ages. Phase 1 will centre around Clive throughout his teenage years. Phase 2 will centre around Clive in his 20s, and Phase 3 centres around Clive in his 30s. Yoshida noted that because the game will span such a significant period of time, there will be extensive in-game lore compendiums available should players wish to dive in and immerse themselves in the world. There will also be side quests that are designed to fill players in as to how various conflicts have evolved in the background, but it's assumed, based on their wider objectives for the story, that neither of these will be essential for players to understand what's been going on. It's also been revealed that 16 will not pull too heavily from the franchise's illustrious past. This has been one of the hallmarks of Final Fantasy XIV, with Yoshida describing it as a Final Fantasy theme park. But even though that approach has worked well for that particular game, Yoshida stressed that it's not an inherent trait of Creative Business Unit 3, and for that reason, even though 16 will feature subtle allusions, there won't be anywhere near as many tributes as have been featured throughout 14. In terms of the game's rating, Yoshida noted that he's seen numerous projects change their vision to cater for age ratings, and we know that the Final Fantasy VII Remake suffered from this, as they toned down certain scenes and amended others so that they didn't get bumped up into the next age rating bracket. For Final Fantasy XVI, the decision has been made not to compromise. Yoshida noted, to make sure that we could tell the story that we wanted in the way that we wanted to, we decided to pursue a mature rating in most of the regions that will be releasing the game. But again, this is not because we wanted to simply make the game more violent or the game more explicit. This is because we felt it was necessary to allow us to explore these more mature themes that the game tackles. Yoshida stopped short of saying any previous game had provided direct influence over how the game is being developed, but he did note that their experience on Final Fantasy XIV has helped them to portray icons with the correct amount of reverence. He did note, however, that when conducting user research, the team found that people felt the Final Fantasy formula had started to get a bit too stale, particularly from a narrative and thematic perspective. Players were getting tired of the same old fantasy aesthetic and the blending of fantasy elements with technology, and that's the main reason why they decided to revert all the way back to creating a game that has a medieval feel. As many of the development team also have a penchant for high fantasy, it was fortunate that these two perspectives aligned, and they are hopeful this decision will resonate with players when the game releases. From a gameplay perspective, they are attempting to be as considerate of as many fans as possible, but even though they no doubt respect the legacy fans who have been with the franchise for decades, their attentions are now much more focused on pushing Final Fantasy into the minds of younger gamers who have perhaps never experienced the franchise before, as they found that many of them just don't have an interest in the series in general. The best way of changing this, they believe, is to create a fast-paced, real-time action game that's blended with a mature and developed narrative. They were aware that this will be a first for the franchise, as no previous mainline game has had a pure focus on action, and that it could ostracize particular segments who have been craving a new turn-based experience. But they were also realistic, with Yoshida noting that it's impossible to please everyone, and that they felt creating a real-time action game based on their desire to use cutting-edge graphics was the only way to make players feel like they're actually taking part in a motion picture. It's for this reason that despite gameplay within the Final Fantasy VII Remake receiving a ton of praise, they have decided to go in a completely different direction. They felt that too much of that system was rooted in the past, and that in order to take the series in a new direction rather than build off of old systems, Hiroshi Takai and Ryota Suzuki made real-time action their focus. But whereas they tried to move away from the 7 Remake, Yoshida did note that they have spoken to the Kingdom Hearts team and picked their brains about how to make the system seamless, especially with regards to boss encounters. Outside of this, Yoshida confirmed that the game will not be open world and will instead be focused around self-contained areas. They felt that based on the time they have available, creating a single world would be too restrictive, and by creating an independent area-based game, players will be able to gain a feel for its truly global scale. As such, the story will be quite linear, with very few branching paths. They noted that consumer research showed that completion rates in recent RPGs has been very low, so they have designed Final Fantasy XVI to be a roller coaster from beginning to end so that players won't want to get off, and it's for this reason that they have also been working closely with the team who made Kingslave Final Fantasy XV. Having said that, there will be distractions. Yoshida mentioned that players will be able to take on difficult hunts from a bulletin board, and there will also be simple crafting mechanics so that players can create their own weapons for Clive to wield. 16 will also feature a New Game Plus mode with enhanced difficulty, but it won't have any unique features outside of that. Having said that, the game will feature a score attack mode which will encourage players to finish various segments of the game as quickly and cleanly as possible, as well as the option to replay with certain restrictions relating to abilities and equipment. They also mentioned that the UI will be used to denote difficulty, so that those who are watching live streams or Let's Plays will be able to immediately tell what difficulty the game is on without having to ask. There has also been a ton of speculation as to whether or not this will be a single player game or whether Clive will have a party, and to nip this in the bud, Yoshida has now confirmed that Clive will have comrades. He noted that they didn't want to overwhelm users with the newest trailer, so focused solely on Clive's battles. That said, for most of the journey, Clive will be accompanied by one or more companions. These companions will participate in battle and even trade banter with Clive, swapping in and out depending on what's happening in relation to the story. But as with previous games, they will be AI driven, so players will focus solely on Clive. It's unconfirmed, but Yoshida hinted that Torgal, the puppy we saw within the Awakening trailer, may end up being one of the companions. But Yoshida also noted that he's a wolf, not a puppy, and this was intriguing, as Torgal was a prominent character within The Last Remnant. Alongside this, Final Fantasy XVI will also feature a buddy system that sounds akin to pawns from Dragon's Dogma. They will accompany Clive, and you will be able to issue commands such as asking them to heal or attack a specific enemy. As had been assumed, Clive will gain access to an Eikon's abilities after claiming its power, and these will be controlled via what's for now being dubbed the Ability Tree. Each Eikon power will have a branch within this tree, with points spent on evolving individual abilities, and this has been established so that players can customize Clive to suit their playstyles. So that players aren't locked in, however, it will be possible to reset the tree as many times as players want, and the developers hope this will encourage them to experiment with different ability sets and playstyles. Eikon battles will also be a fundamental part of the experience, featuring considerable depth, and according to Yoshida, they are something he's wanted to incorporate into a game since before 16 even existed. He shared that the idea actually arrived when he was trying to push his way through crowds at the 2014 or 15 Tokyo Game Show, and he wondered what it would be like to be a giant in size so that he could move more freely. In terms of 16, Yoshida confirmed that Clive will be in control of one of the Eikons involved in each conflict, but he also confirmed they will be massive in terms of scale and duration. When speaking with GameSpot, Yoshida shared that the battle against Titan, for example, will go through many different stages, many different phases, and all of these changes will happen in real time. Yoshida hopes that the player ends up experiencing something that is large in scale, action-packed and high-octane, and that hopefully a lot of players will see it and think, I can't believe you created something that's so crazy. Effort has also been placed around ensuring Eikon battles will have a unique look and feel, with one described as being similar to a 3D shooter, and another being comparable to a pro wrestling match. Alongside this, Clive will also fight in more normalized encounters, and Yoshida shared that these will vary significantly in scale. For example, Clive will square off against smaller sized enemies, as well as waves of these enemies, as we saw in the trailer. But as he progresses, he will encounter elite enemies or mini-bosses like the Curl, as well as full-on bosses and giant creatures. Yoshida also noted that sometimes Clive, as a normal-sized human, will fight against full-sized Eikons. Now, we don't quite know when 16 will next surface, but Yoshida did share with Famitsu that they are planning to share more details this fall. This will focus on the world itself, its surrounding lore and the storyline, with there being plans to also share more information about the various Eikons and their respective roles. Yoshida also spoke more about the current state of the game, as well as what they will be focusing on over the next 12 months. This came via the PlayStation blog, as Yoshida said, "We have a lot of voiceovers in several languages that still need to be recorded. Final Fantasy XVI is a very action-orientated game, so we're also doing a lot of playtesting to fine-tune the difficulty levels, as well as putting the final touches on the cutscenes and going through a full-scale debugging process." Either way, it sounds like there's a lot in store for the next 12 months, and we hope you've enjoyed this condensed look at all the information that's just been revealed. If you did, please be sure to hit the like button and make sure you subscribe, as we have plenty of awesome content coming up, including the evolution of Moogles. Alright everyone, with that, this is Daryl signing out. I'd like to extend a big thank you to all of our Patreon and YouTube membership supporters, especially Benjamin Snow, the livestream and Gregory, who are super special Onion Knight supporters, and of course, a big thank you to everyone for watching this video. I'll see you all again soon for more Final Fantasy goodness.